Good evening, everyone. We have a brilliant speaker tonight for you. We have Daniel from Satalia, who will deliver a really interesting presentation on AI, blockchain, and the future of the business.
Everybody, so we've got about 45 minutes to go through 3 topics. We're going to talk about AI. Everybody's going to go away understanding what AI is and what AI isn't. There's lots and lots of misunderstanding about this technology in industry and the media, and we'll clarify it today. The second thing we'll talk about is innovation, how we can bring people and technology together to do amazing things. And we'll also talk about the end of the world as well, which is always a nice topic in the evening. All right, so a little bit about me. I do 3 things. I run a master's program in UCL in applied AI. I've got about 100 students every year that go out there and apply emerging technologies to solving business problems across a whole different range of industries. And my entire academic background is in artificial intelligence. So for 20 years I've been studying AI. I have an evil corporate hat where I run a company called Satalia. We're about 120 people and we build AI solutions for companies like Tesco and PwC. And I get to travel the world educating industry leaders, people like yourself, politicians, academics about the impact of technology on society. Okay, so before we get into definitions of AI, I want to try and gauge how intelligent this audience is. All right, so I'm going to ask you some questions and I hope that you answer some of those questions. We're going to start out very easy and we'll get more and more complicated. So the first question I want to ask you all is, what is data? I'm sure you've all heard of the word data before. What is data?
Zeros and ones.
Zeros and ones, yeah, great. It comes from the Latin word datum, which means giving things. It's ones and zeros, it's bits and bytes, it's symbols, it's a fabric of our universe. It's not until you give it context does it become information. So if I say to you 210280, what is this? It's data. If I say that it's a date of birth, then it becomes information. All right, let's get you warmed up. What does this probably say? Great, we'll do that. What does this probably say? You can see that the data that's entering your eyes, the light in the middle is the same data, but it'll give me a different meaning based on its context. I don't know how well this is going to translate, but if I tweeted right now, my laptop is sick, what does that mean? My laptop is sick. It's also cool. Anybody else? If you're old like me, it means that it's broken. But if you're cool or you're under 21, it means that it's good. If I asked you, what does this say? What does this say?
2 things.
2 things. Which is what?
Instruction.
John, read the letter to Mary. John read the letter to Mary. Okay, but we need to picture in your mind the scene. John read the letter to Mary. Picture that image in your head. John read the letter to Mary. What picture do you have in your mind? John read the letter to Mary. Huh? A guy reading a letter out loud to a girl. Good. Anybody else have a different picture? John read the letter to Mary. Yeah? Huh? Okay. Yeah?
The letter was about, the letter was written
to Mary. It could be addressed to Mary. I said, so John could be reading a letter that was sent to Mary or addressed to Mary. They could be learning the alphabet, ABC. John read the letter to Mary. John could be reading the letter of the law to Mary. John could be reading a book called The Letter. The Letter to a Lady Called Mary. John could be reading a book called The Letter to Mary. John could be reading 2 words on a piece of paper, The Letter to Mary. John could be reading 4 words on a piece of paper, The Letter to Mary. This actually could be interpreted in over 13 different ways, not 2. And we will all go away with a picture in our mind of what we think is correct, and we're probably wrong. My goal today is to convince you all that humans are rubbish. Okay, that's my goal today. Okay, so one of the biggest challenges we have in computer science is taking this stuff, this light, this sound, this text, and figuring out what does it actually mean. And we're getting quite good at this now. So imagine if I give you a spreadsheet, and in the spreadsheet it has 3 columns. There's a column which is the date, a column which is the temperature on that date, and a column which is the number of ice creams that I sold on that date. Date, temperature, ice cream sales. What do you do with that information? Let's draw a graph. So we have increasing temperature along the bottom, ice cream sales along the y-axis. What does our graph look like? I know you can do this. Come on, wave your arms around. What does our graph look like? Come on, good. Yeah, we see some sort of trend going upwards. The hotter it gets, the more ice creams we sell. This is called descriptive analytics. What we're doing is we're organising information to find patterns, to know things about the world. And we can do something really cool now. We can do a thing that everybody's excited about called predictive analytics. And we can put a line through it. You can do this in Excel very easily, and now we have predictive power. So if it's 22 degrees outside, I can look at my model and I can see how many ice creams I need to manufacture, even if I've never seen 22 degrees before. And I can take this model of the world and I can put it into a factory and now have factory manufacturing ice cream based on this model. But knowing something is very different to understanding it. Can anybody tell me why we sell ice creams when it's hot outside? Why do we sell ice creams when it's hot outside? Okay, so I'm inside, it's hot outside. What's the first thing that usually happens in the UK? What happens? Yeah, maybe, not in London. I'm inside, it's hot outside. We go outside. Why do we go outside? It's a nice, scarce resource. Yeah, we like getting warm, then what happens? What happens before we buy an ice cream? We get hot, good, then what happens? We buy an ice cream, what do we do with ice cream? Put it down our pants, what do we do? What do we do with ice cream? Eat it, and why does eating ice cream cool you down? Thermodynamics. Okay, to expect a computer to understand that narrative, possible. It doesn't understand, and we like to go outside and we can cool ourselves down in lots of different ways, which is why it's really important to bridge the people that have domain expertise with the people that are finding patterns from data. Because your domain expert's going to say, Daniel, your model of the world is wrong. Because if tomorrow is the hottest day ever, scorching hot, what's my factory going to do? According to my model, it's going to manufacture lots of ice cream. What will really happen if tomorrow is scorching hot? Exactly, nobody's going to go outside. It's too hot. So the model of the world looks more like this. And what you don't want to do is you don't want to manufacture lots of ice cream and not sell any because it can bankrupt you. So it's really important that we understand them perfectly so that ultimately we can make the best decisions. All right. So decision making is at the top, and I would argue that humans are terrible at making decisions. Okay. So I'm going to try to argue this now. So has anyone read the book Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman? Okay, good. I'd highly recommend you read this book. Daniel Kahneman is the Nobel Prize winning economist. He argues we have a fast brain and a slow brain. Okay, and I'm going to try to give you some examples of this. So the first question is, what colour is this? What colour is that? Orange, what colour is that? Brown? It's actually the same colour. I promise you right now, the same coloured light is going into your eyes, but you're perceiving them as being different colours based on your statistical experience, based on how your brain is wired. And if I asked you, what colour is this? Blue, good. What colour is this? Yeah, they're all grey. I promise you right now, grey light is going into your eyes, but you're perceiving them as being those colours based on your statistical experience, etc. And I'm not going to ask you to do this, but if you held your thumb in front of you, the size of your colour vision is about the size of your thumbnail. So all of this colour that you see in your periphery is being made up by your brain. Your brain makes up a huge amount of the world based on its statistical experience, and very often it gets it wrong. Okay? So I'm going to ask you a few maths questions now. Your job is to answer these maths questions as fast as possible. Okay? So use your fast brain. If you don't answer them faster than your competitors, they're going to take your market. Okay? So the first question is, what is 2 times 2? Excellent. One person. What is 14 times 763? Okay, so you need your slow brain for that one. The first one, your fast brain, and your slow brain. Okay, let me ask you another question. Again, nice and easy. The combined price of a bat and a ball is £1.10. The bat is £1 more than the ball. How much is the ball? Fast brain? You knew the answer already, didn't you? You little cheat. You did, didn't you? So if you thought 10 pence, then it's not 10 pence. The bat is £1.05. The ball is 5 pence. The combined price is £1.10. I can give you thousands of these examples, and even you will get them wrong. Okay, and this is where we use our fast brain and we make mistakes all the time. All right, so let's just go through this. So imagine these are staff members. All right, I don't know whether you can recognize yourself here. And imagine we know everything about these staff members. We know their skills. We know they can fly and swim. And what we want to do is we want to organise these staff members in a way that satisfies some rules. So swimming staff members have got to be right and walking ones, and males prefer to be near females, etc. Ignore the rules right now, but can anybody tell me how many possible combinations there are of these 5 staff members? So we're looking at one combination. I can flip another 2 around, I get another combination. Flip 2 around, I get another combination. How many possible combinations do I have of these 5 staff members? Nearly. I see a thought process. 5 factorial, 5 exclamation mark, which is 120. 120 possible combinations of these 5 staff members. And let's make the, out of which some will satisfy the rules, some won't, but only one will be the best one. Let's make the problem a bit more complicated. So 15 staff members, can anybody tell me how many possible combinations? You don't say 15 factorial. What does your fast brain say? Billion? Good. Yeah, there's over 1 trillion possible combinations. To expect a human to solve this problem, you're wasting your time. One rule to take away with you today, anything more than 7, don't use a human for. Okay? Any allocation of resources, any decision that requires more than allocating more than 7 things, humans are useless. Okay? And actually, industry don't have problems of this size, they have problems of this size. So there are 500 staff members, can you tell me how many possible combinations are? It's a number that you can't even imagine. It's a number that's this big. And to put this number into context, this is how many atoms there are in the universe. And to give you some more context, one of my clients is PwC, and we're optimizing 5,000 staff members for them. 5,000 factorial. Yeah, anything more than 7, don't use a human for. You can probably hire a good computer scientist that can solve problems up to about 50. Anything beyond that, you need to have deep specialist expertise I'll talk about in a moment. Let's just run this problem home. So imagine I've got my ice cream van, and my ice cream van has to deliver ice creams around these 24 points around London. Okay? Humans are actually quite good at solving this problem, so if we wanted to draw a path around these 24 points that saves the most amount of petrol, let's take maybe a few minutes, we'll draw a nice path. How long will it take a computer to get the shortest path? One that's going to save the most amount of petrol? Seconds? Everybody happy with that? So we've played this game already. It's actually 20 billion years. So if you put 24 times 23 times 21 into a calculator, you get this number of routes. That's how many routes there are around those 24 points. And if you had a computer that could look at 1 million routes a second, that could check 1 million routes every second, it would take 20 billion years to go through every single possible one and say, this one that I looked at 10 billion years ago, this one's the shortest one. You should do that. And if I had another point on the map, I now have 25 times 20 billion years, 5,000 billion years. If I had another point on the map, I've got 26 times 5,000 billion years. These are exponential problems. They get ugly very quickly. And so one of my clients is Tesco. They're delivering to 100,000 points every single day on the map. Industry have thousands of these types of problems where people are making decisions to allocate resources. And humans are solving these problems, and they're solving them very badly. And most people don't realize that. And the reason why I talk about this is because when I build systems for organizations, these systems usually have these 3 parts. The first part is data, and everybody's going on their digital transformation, or they're getting all of their data together, and hopefully they're using the blockchain as well to try and store their data. But everybody's going on that journey of storing their data, which is great. Everybody's now excited about this part. They're all hiring data scientists, statisticians, machine learning people to try and find patterns from their data, know things about the world. The problem is they think that these people are to solve all of their problems. Data scientists are not good at making decisions. They're not decision scientists. And I suspect that over the next 5 years, companies are going to realize that all of the 10, 15, 100 data scientists that are hiring are not going to solve the problems that they have. Companies don't have machine learning problems. They have optimization problems. They have decision problems. And decision science is a skill that matured in academia about 2 decades ago. It used to be called operations research. Does anybody old enough to know that term? Operations research, exactly. And then what happened is that we started to make some advancements in machine learning, and so for the past 2 decades, academia has got very excited about this part. But as I say, organizations are going to realize this is very good at knowing things about the world, but then you have to make decisions. Decision making is an incredibly hard thing to do. There are exponential problems. And I would argue there are about 3,000 strong optimization experts around the globe, only 3,000. So there's a massive skill shortage in actually doing this. So if you build a system that you give data to, and it goes through a model, it makes a decision, and tomorrow you give it the same data, it makes the same decision, you have automation. And automation is awesome because this can be done better than humans, and this can be definitely done better than humans. Can anybody tell me the definition of stupidity? Doing the same thing over again and expecting it. Insanity, and it's close. By definition, automation is stupid, and by definition, automation is not AI or not intelligent. So anybody that touches this technology stack at the moment is calling themselves an AI company, which is fine. You get more money from VCs and you get more clients, but this is not AI. There are 2 definitions of AI. The first definition I think is weak, but it's very popular, which is getting computers to do things that humans can do. Getting computers to do things humans can do. The reason why this is a popular definition is because in recent years we've managed to get machines to do things that traditionally are only in the domain of human beings. We're now able to get machines to recognise males and females, who's happy, who's sad, that's a chair. We're able to get machines to do that. We're able to get machines to correspond in natural language. Things that were traditionally only in the domain of human beings. And because humans are the most intelligent thing we know in the universe, when we start to get machines to mimic human behaviours, we then assume that that's intelligence. Humans are very good at finding patterns in 4 dimensions. Humans are very good at solving problems up to 7. Computers can find patterns in thousands of dimensions, and they can solve problems with thousands of moving parts. Benchmarking human intelligence against machine intelligence is not a sensible thing to do. Okay, we're not intelligent. There's a better definition of intelligence, which I did my master's on intelligence, which actually is this. It's goal-directed adaptive behaviour. Goal-directed in the sense we're trying to achieve an objective. We're trying to sell as many ice creams as possible, we're trying to utilise our staff as efficiently as possible, whatever. We have to have a goal. Behaviour is how quickly can I allocate my resources towards that goal? How quickly can I answer the question? But the key word for me in this definition is the word adaptive. Ultimately, what you have to do is build a system that makes a decision, learns whether that decision is good or bad, using IoT and all this kind of stuff, adapts its own model, adapts its own understanding of the world, so that tomorrow it makes a better decision. Okay? True AI are systems that are able to adapt themselves in production. And if I was being brutally honest, I haven't seen a single successful, complex adaptive system in production in my life. I would argue that nobody's doing AI. Does anybody remember the Microsoft Twitter bot that became sexist and racist very quickly? So Microsoft launched a Twitter bot, lots of teenagers decided to tease it, and it became a Nazi bot very quickly. This is what happens when you put adaptive systems in production. They can adapt in ways you can't predict. And so it's hard enough building machine learning on top of your data lake. It's hard enough then bringing in optimization and decision making on top of that. And then to build systems that safely adapt themselves is even more difficult. Really, really hard. And I would argue there's only a small handful of companies in the world that know how to do this. Let's be one of them. So if you go to an IT director and you say, IT director, I'm going to put a system in production that today is going to behave differently than it will tomorrow. So no way is that going into production. I need to be really sure about how my systems are going to behave. And you say, oh, by the way, if the systems get better and learn, it needs to make mistakes. There's no way am I putting a system in production that I'm going to admit is making mistakes, even though automation is making mistakes all the time. And so for the true paradigm of AI are systems that are able to adapt themselves in production. Okay, so there are 2 flavors of AI. This is Socrates before he drinks hemlock and kills himself. Socrates is famous for inspiring the Socratic method. So if I say to you, Socrates is a man, and all men are mortal, what can I infer from that? Socrates is a man, all men are mortal? I can infer Socrates is mortal. AI in the 60s and 70s was us writing down these rules and then trying to infer new knowledge. And actually, some people might see some synergies here between this, knowledge graphs, and blockchain. So these triples. But it didn't really scale, didn't really work. So in the 80s and 90s, a new type of AI came on. This is the brain of a bumblebee. Bumblebees have 1 million neurons. Their brain can fit on the end of a needle. You have 80 billion neurons. Bumblebees can do amazing things. My PhD was trying to model the brain of a bumblebee. Bumblebees can navigate 3D worlds. They recognize objects, they solve problems, they talk to each other, they experience the same optical illusions that we do. They don't handle windows very well, but ultimately, they're very smart creatures. And the question was, can you take the brain of a bumblebee and can you model that into a machine? And 15 years ago, that was impossible. It was impossible to model 1 million neurons. But about 9 years ago, a new paradigm in this technology allows us to now start to model brains with millions, if not hundreds of millions of neurons. It's often referred to as deep learning. And we can now start to teach these things to do things that only humans used to be able to do. This is what people are calling AI, because these things are doing things that humans traditionally only could do. But I would argue that these technologies are very good at finding patterns in data. They're very good at knowing things about the world. But these are not the right systems to make decisions. You want to use these systems to know that that's a male, that's female, that's a chair, and then you want to use these systems, these technologies, to be able to reason with that knowledge to then achieve some objective. And then you have to build systems that adapt themselves in production. Right? That's the true paradigm of AI. Okay, this is where it gets a bit weird. So if this is the bounds of human ability here, I would argue that we can take any specific task that a human does. And we can probably build an AI system that can outperform us at any specific task. Really significantly outperform us at any task. And, but it's very inefficient and costly to build individual systems that solve individual problems. It's messy, it's expensive. And so the question is, instead of building one system that does one thing, can you build one system that does many things? This is called artificial general intelligence. You are all GI. You are one system that can do many things. And that's what makes us special, makes us very powerful. But if you take this to its logical conclusion, it's predicted that within our lifetime we're going to build a brain that is smarter than us in every single possible way. This is the last invention that humanity will create. It's predicted to happen around 2050, 2040, and nobody knows whether this is going to be the most glorious thing that happens to humanity or our biggest existential threat. I think it's our biggest existential threat, and I'm trying to work out how in the next 30 years we mitigate that risk. We've got some ideas to share with you as well. Okay, if you ask Elon Musk and some others, they'll say this thing has already happened. Singularity has already happened. Let me digress a little bit. There's a concept called the Fermi paradox. I don't know if you've heard of the Fermi paradox, but the universe is very big and it's very old. It's 14 billion years old. The mathematical likelihood of there being intelligent life in our universe is mathematically very high. The mathematical likelihood of intelligent life surviving to the point where it builds a superintelligence, where it builds something that becomes infinitely intelligent, more intelligent than biology, is also mathematically very high. So the mathematical likelihood of there being superintelligence in our universe is very high. And if you build a superintelligence that can navigate space and time, understand physics and all this kind of stuff much better than biology, then when we look into the night sky, we should see evidence of life. But the paradox is that we don't. And the hypothesis is that we're living in a simulation created by a superintelligence in a different universe. There's a 1 in a billion chance that this is not a simulation. This is highly likely a simulation created by, and there's some interesting experiments in quantum physics that highlight this. I can try and answer in Q&A if you want. Anyway, before we build a superintelligence, we're having to build systems that make decisions about our everyday lives. So I'm in my driverless car. We've all heard this before. In front of me is a kid, to the right are 2 adults, and to the left is a cliff. And the car can't stop. Who does the car kill? So who would kill the kid? Put your hand up. Nobody. Who would kill the 2 adults? Nobody. Who would kill you? 1 person. 2 people. For 3,000 years, philosophers have been arguing about this stuff, and we still can't agree as a species. And I would argue the reason why we can't agree as a species is because we haven't agreed what our objective is. What is our species' objective function? We sort of have a pseudo-objective function, which is to maximise GDP. I think it's a very silly objective function. So you should kill whatever minimises GDP. I'll talk about more about this later on. I actually heard that one day we'll have an ethical setting in our car where we say we want to kill grandmas over cats, and so then it's our decision. I actually heard that one day we'll have a brain scan, and our digital twin, our avatar, will make decisions based on our behalf. So it will decide what to kill based on our values and based on our personality. And I actually heard a nice extension of that, which was we can actually move them to have politicians, where all of these policies that are being proposed, instead of having politicians represent us, all of our digital avatars can vote on the policies, which I think is a quite interesting future. It's a decentralized future. And if there's a burning building, and in the burning building there's a crying baby in a suitcase with £1 billion, and you can only save one, what do you save? Baby? And how many babies can you save with £1 billion? Yeah, lots of babies. I still save the baby, and I need to ask myself why. If you build a robot, and you say, robot, your job is to maximise life expectancy, that's your objective. The robot's going to go and save £1 billion because it knows it can invest that money into curing malaria or whatever. And if you all know the answer to this, but if I built a robot and said, robot, your job is to eradicate cancer. What's the easiest way of eradicating cancer? Eradicating humans. So when we give these systems the objective, we need to make sure that we give it the right constraints so that it doesn't start to make bad decisions. So everything for me is an optimization problem. It has an objective, subject to some constraints. And we have to be very careful about designing these systems. This is a whole world of what's called ethical AI, explainable algorithms. I'd love to talk about ethics, and maybe we can have that in the Q&A and in the quiz. I'm trying to build an ethical framework to hold future AIs against. But when we're building systems and making decisions about our everyday life, ethical decisions about our everyday lives. We have to try to understand how is it making that decision, and that is a very hard problem to solve. And again, I would argue there are only a few companies in the world that know how to build systems that are explainable. And at some point, governments will regulate organisations, saying that they have to explain how they're going to work. All right, let's switch now and talk about innovation. So just take a moment and read this slide. I'm sure that many of you have had experiences that are similar to this in your organisations. This is a hierarchy. It breeds certain types of interesting relationships. This is not a picture of Satalia, though most people do sell books to each other. That's a very common thing that happens in my company. And I would argue that this structure, this hierarchical structure, is not conducive for innovation. It's not conducive for adaptation, for intelligence. In fact, I would argue that over the next decade, this technology stack that I just described is going to be a commodity. We already have access to super cheap compute. We already have access to tons and tons of data. All of the tools you need to build massive brains, to build chatbots, all of this, it's all free. It's all open source. You don't need to pay for it. At some point, somebody will commoditize optimization, and somebody will commoditize self-learning. This stack will become a commodity. The battleground for organizations is not technology, it's talent. How can you attract, retain, motivate talent, and enable that talent to allow your organization to innovate? If you're not innovating, if you're not adapting to a changing world faster than your competitors, they're more intelligent than you, and they will win. Steve Jobs actually had a very good definition for innovation. He said innovation is creativity that shifts. And the most important word in that definition for me is the word that. That is the process of generating ideas and getting them to the point where somebody's willing to pay for them. And anybody that's an entrepreneur will know that's a very hard problem, making yourself sustainable. The question then is, how do you attract, motivate your employees to innovate? How do you create a system that enables them to innovate? Because I would argue that that system is not conducive for innovation. There's a very introductory book by Dan Pink that there are three things that motivate people: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Autonomy is giving people the freedom to do whatever they want. Mastery is giving them the ability to become really good at what they want. And purpose is giving them something higher to align themselves with. And I would argue that there's another one here around safety, but I'll talk about that later maybe. So the first challenge for an organisation is, how do you attract talent in the first place? And I work with global CEOs, and I ask them, where are you on this matrix? How sexy is your industry? How interesting or challenging are your problems? Because if you're not sexy and you don't have interesting problems, you're not going to attract talent. If you're sexy and you've got interesting problems, you'll attract talent and they will stick. And if you're in the other two quadrants, you'll attract talent and they'll leave after 18 months. And that can be more dangerous to your company than not being able to attract talent at all. The number of CEOs that are trying to build data science teams, AI teams, but they can't hire a single person because they're deficient in this matrix. You need to be really honest with yourself. This will determine whether you build your own team, work with third-party vendors, buy technology off the shelf. I see a lot of waste at the moment going into this. But once you have attracted talent one way or another, the next challenge is, how do you create a culture, structure, that enables that talent to thrive? And over the past decade, what we've seen is a flattening of organizations. We've seen a removal of middle managers because of new organizational structures, new communication technologies to create these thin or flat organizations. I would argue that this is still broken. I have about 120 people in my company. We have no managers, no hierarchies, no KPIs. Everybody's free to work where they want, how they want, wherever they want, on whatever they want. And we're trying to create a new organizational structure that operates very much like a swarm. They're often referred to as decentralized or distributed organizations. And underpinning this is blockchain, underpinning this is artificial intelligence. And my goal, this is going to sound crazy, is not just to scale this to 250 people or 2,000 people. My goal is to scale this model to a planet. So I want to try and create a planet where everybody is free to work where they want, how they want, or whatever they want, without having to belong to a centralized organization. And I want to try and create a planet that removes the need to have companies and removes the need to have countries. That's my 30-year plan. And I'll explain why that's important at the moment. And so, okay, just to give you, blockchain enables this, and I'm sure that anybody that knows here about blockchain can imagine why and how this is important. Blockchain is the data infrastructure, the trusted data layer that allows us to start to build artificial intelligence, uncorruptible artificial intelligence on top of this data. I'll come back to this maybe, it's about safety, but so we take all of our data across all of our organization, and at the moment we are storing it in traditional databases. At some point we might migrate it to blockchain, but at the moment organizations are going on their digital transformation, they're getting all of their data together one way or the other, but what they don't realize they're doing is they're ultimately trying to create a digital twin of themselves. Ironically, they're trying to create a simulation of their own organization, so they're putting sensors on assets, on their machinery, on their devices, to try and capture what's going on, so they have better visibility. They're trying to join up all of these applications so they have visibility across the entire supply chain. But most organizations are actually made up not of machinery, they're made up of people. So this isn't a ring, this is a device that's capturing my heart rate, my temperature, my location, all of this kind of stuff. We're seeing now organizations roll out biometrics, the biometric devices to capture the health of their employees, so that they can use that data to help them make better decisions. John, when you've had a coffee on a Monday morning, you're really grumpy and your sales decreases in the evening. And Mary, did you know that these people were really anxious when they talk to you about X, Y, and Z? Okay, so this is the idea. And so this is a digital twin of my company. You can see here that if one of these two people leave, I get a silo between two parts of my organization. I can identify people who are going to leave the company before they know they're going to leave the company. There's some interesting ethical issues around that. I can identify secret lovers in my company as well. And there are lots of interesting ethical questions. But what organizations are trying to do is to create this picture of their organization, a digital twin, so that they can, the leadership or whoever can ask questions, say, if I hired more people here, if I went to this market, or if I lost this customer, what impact will that have on my happiness of my employees, on my supply chain, all of this kind of stuff. And to be able to run scenarios to adapt that organization more quickly to a changing world. Adaptation means that you're more intelligent. But what CEOs don't know is at some point AI will be running those scenarios, and the CEOs and the leadership won't be required. So this is a digital twin, and this is where organizations are moving. You can hopefully imagine why, again, blockchain is important here, because the data that this is sitting on needs to be uncorruptible. So it needs to be trusted. Okay. So just one interesting outcome of, we ask all of our employees every year to make public recommendations for their salary. So everybody publicly declares what they want to be paid, and then everybody votes on whether those salaries should be reduced or increased or kept the same. And we use machine learning to determine how many votes one person has for another. So if I've worked very closely with you over the past year, if I'm very knowledgeable about the domain, if I know about the company strategy, then I would have more votes for your salary than other people. So I had interns voting on my salary, and I had interns voting on other people's salaries that had more weighting than me. And one interesting outcome was it turns out that females are not always very good at negotiating their salary. Imagine all of these dots here are people in my company. This blue dot here is one of our females. She had 429 votes to approve her salary, 36 votes to reduce, 280 votes to increase her salary. So she went away, she came back with a new recommendation. She now has 494 votes to approve, 0 votes to reduce, 210 votes to approve. She was still undervaluing herself. Go away and come back with a new number. And the person on the end there was me. And I said, I know you can increase her salary. And so the question is, can you use decentralized decision-making, weighted, democratic decentralized decision-making to make better decisions? And I would argue you can. It still has its flaws, it still has biases, we're all biased. It's less biased than having a manager who has a budget, who's negotiating with each one of their employees, and when one of their females is undervaluing themselves, they say, ooh, that's good because I can spend more money over here. That's not fair. And so we're applying this principle, decentralization, weighted, democratic decision-making across all aspects of our organization so that we can operate much more like a swarm instead of a hierarchy. And these decentralized autonomous organizations are enabled through a trusted data ledger, which is the blockchain. So, shall we talk about the end of the world? No, time. Okay, so there's a huge amount of hype associated around AI, probably more than any technology that I have heard, more than big data and all of this kind of stuff. I think that organizations are going to realize that there is a bit of a bubble in this space, that they're hiring the wrong people, that are solving the wrong problems. But I do think the reason why there's so much hype is because there's an acknowledgement that AI is going to change our lives in ways that we cannot imagine, probably more than any other technology. And so there's all of these countries now investing in AI strategies because they understand the importance of this. I don't know if anybody can tell me where that quote comes from. The nation that leads in AI will be the rulers of the world. Does anybody know who said that? Vladimir Putin, to a group of actually kids. but I think the acknowledgement is that this is an incredibly powerful technology, and the people, the organisations, the companies, the countries that embrace these technologies, they get there first, are going to win the objective. And this is where I have a concern about our objective. Has anybody seen the series Black Mirror on Netflix? I highly recommend you watch this series. So each episode is a unique episode, 50 minutes long. And each episode is set in a dystopian future, near dystopian future. So you can just dip in and dip out, you don't have to watch the whole thing. And one of these episodes is called Nosedive. It's one of my favourite episodes. It's a dystopian future where each of us have an app, and we all rate each other out of 5 based on our interactions. So you'll be rating me now out of 5, and I'll be rating you back because you didn't answer the question, so you'll get 1. You'll be rating the taxi driver, you'll be rating the person that you meet and have a conversation in the lift. And what happens is that this rating creates this social score. And this social score then unlocks faster internet and better hotel rooms and all this kind of stuff. And this isn't a dystopian future because we know that this is being rolled out across China, social system score. I even believe that there are people that are not allowed to leave China because they have a low score. And I don't know how true this is, but I heard that you can even download an app within a 500-meter radius. You can identify people that have a low score. And if you see them doing something that they shouldn't be doing, like spending more money, then you can report them to authorities. Yeah, is that true?
True, it's not true.
It's what? It's not score.
It's not true.
It's okay. Cool. That's cool. Excellent. So this isn't just going to happen in the East. This is, I know governments that are talking about rolling stuff out. I know companies that are rolling it out, asking for your data. We ask for my employees' data, right? So give me your data because we can help you make better decisions. Yeah.
The lead scientist of the assessment credit, training Dr. Hulme, he initially worked with me in Canada to develop credit scoring for financial inclusion in Canada.
Yeah.
I'll hire him away from me.
Right.
To develop assessment credit.
Oh, really? That's very unfortunate. I'll talk about that in a moment. Actually, it's maybe a little bit similar, but my concern here is I think that this is going to come. We already have a document that describes our reputation. It's called our CV. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's true, but it's probably a very crude way of saying to people, this is who we are, this is our capability. And so this is coming. We will end up using data, using AI to understand our capabilities, to be able to identify opportunities to align ourselves with. This is coming. My concern is that if our objective function is to maximize GDP, if our objective function is to maximize profit, then we're going to be driven to squeeze more and more out of each other. Squeeze more out of countries, our companies, and it's a race to the bottom. And I believe that this is creating an unsustainable future for our species. This idea of shareholder value has actually only been around since the 80s. I don't know if you know that. But before the 80s, it was about building employment, sustainable organisations. And now it's about getting that 5% returns to your shareholders every quarter. Because if you don't, if you're a CEO, like Mark Zuckerberg, if he's not providing his 5% returns to his shareholders through new ideas and growth and all this kind of stuff, then what tends to happen is a CEO will make bad decisions. They will make decisions that compromise their employees, compromise their users, compromise the environment, not pay tax. That's how you can get your 5% returns, and this is not sustainable. Okay. And so Facebook have 10,000 PhDs whose job it is to keep you looking at that screen. The longer you look at the screen, the more money Facebook makes. Who's going to win that battle? You or them or your kids? Yeah, I think they're going to win. Right? They're very, very smart at being able to do this. And my concern, again, is that this drive to try and make more and more profit means that we are making bad decisions. And I think there's a future where companies like Facebook don't exist anymore. I'm not trying to argue this. So if you could build a platform that allows anybody from anywhere in the world to boot up an idea, and anybody from anywhere in the world to be able to contribute to that idea, whether you're a developer, a designer, human resources expert, marketer, leader, project manager. If you can resource frictionlessly people from across the globe to drive forward that idea, I would argue that you don't need to have centralized organizations. If you could boot up an open source version of Facebook, an open source version of Uber or Airbnb, very quickly you can make that work. And what you need, obviously, is an economic model that funds the community. And to give you some numbers, Facebook have 2 billion users. If each user paid £1 per year, £1, that's £2 billion per year to service a community of 30,000 people globally that are building a platform to connect people instead of making shareholders 5% returns. And if things like this become weaponized, then they can be turned off without worrying about pissing off shareholders. And so I am trying to build that platform. And I know there are other organizations out there that are trying to build decentralized autonomous organizations. But I think that in the next 5-10 years we can make this happen. And we might be able to make this platform ubiquitous and enable us to unlock the creative potential of humanity, enable people to boot up ideas and have those ideas resourced frictionlessly without having to have centralized organizations. And that's for me, a very exciting role. So there are 3 things I'm concerned about. And the first one is not my domain. The first one I refer to as the environmental singularity. This was a survey that was done at, I think it was the World Economic Forum a few years ago. And these leaders were asked, what are the biggest risks to your business, to your organization? And the top 3 are all environmental risks. And I refer to it being as the environmental singularity as being climate change, antimicrobial resistance, pollution, water crisis, all of the stuff that is affecting our environment, which I'm not a domain of. But the 2 other things I'm concerned about is, one is called the economic singularity. So the economic singularity is the point in time where we are, at the moment, freeing up people from their tasks. We're removing people from tasks because automation is great and it helps then people do more interesting things. But this drive to make profit means that we will remove people from whole jobs. And I know this is happening because I built systems that remove hundreds, thousands of people from their jobs. I'm on the forefront of this, and this is happening. It's going to happen very, very quickly. And the problem is there's a point in time where people won't be able to retrain fast enough because AIs will take those jobs. You know? And this is often referred to as the economic singularity. It's predicted to happen around in the next 15 years, and I don't think our economies are set up to deal with that issue. The second concern I have is what is called the technological singularity, which is where we build a superintelligence smarter than others in every single possible way. And I would argue that if we are still fighting each other over GDP, if we're still fighting each other for resources, for profits, for this stuff in the next 30 years, this thing is probably going to see us as a threat and remove us from the equation. And I think that decentralization, I think is going to be enabled by blockchain and AI, can mitigate the risk of these 2 things. One, decentralization could create a world where people can freely contribute to work, at least take the edge off job losses, and you can contribute to work, and people will be able to boot up ideas to tap into those people. One of the examples I like to give is you might have lots of people in old people's homes, old people that are bored, that are dying. You've got people in countries that want to learn English. You can boot up a platform very quickly that connects those people and gives those people meaningful work. And I'm sure that if we can tap into the creative potential of humanity, we'll be able to come up with lots of ideas to utilize everybody. So I think that decentralization can help, and it can help take the edge off this. And I think that if we can build a platform where we are globally moving towards a common goal, where we agree, or where we're collaborating instead of fighting each other, then this thing might just leave us alone. And so to close, I don't think the solution is going to come from governments. And I sit on a number of think tanks, and I don't think it's going to come from economic cycles, expecting these economic cycles to happen, because I think that AI will completely change future economic cycles. I actually think the solution is probably going to come from the private sector, which means that if you're an organization now, and if you don't have purpose, or a purposeful agenda, or purpose running through your veins, then hope is that you will not have customers and you will not have employees. Because customers will want to consume from purposeful organizations, And employees will want to work for companies that have a purpose. And I hope that companies that embed purpose into their organizational structure means that they will survive through having contributors and consumers. Our purpose is to enable everybody to do what they love. How do we create a world where everybody's free to do things that they want to do? And as I said, this is going to be enabled through blockchain and through AI and these decentralized platforms. I think on that note, I'll probably close and open to questions if that's okay. Yes.
I love your vision of the future where in the decentralized world it will be C2C rather than C2B, B2C, if you like, and so on. People can do what they want and be. I can see parallels between the Unix world and the past where people basically fought against IBM and started a movement and so on, where we are now and so on. The problem with that, again, I'm trying to be positive on it.
That's all right.
Is you're making some assumptions there that values that people have don't conflict with each other.
Yeah.
And that is a problem in one country, that's what it costs in countries.
Yeah. If you're in your driverless car in India, you have a cow and a dog, and you can only kill one. What do you kill? Dog, exactly. If you're in the UK, you got a small cow and a dog. Exactly. So the culture will determine those decisions. Actually, values is something I'm really interested in at the moment, and values actually is a function of the objective function. So does that make sense? If I have an objective function, any move I make is moving towards the objective function, is valuable, or moving away from the objective function, which is not valuable. And so value is a function of the objective function, and because we haven't agreed as a global objective function, it means that values differ. And so the exercises I'm going on right at the moment is I've read over the past few decades a lot of philosophy and religious texts and various other things. And if you go and look at the values of the top Fortune 500 companies, I don't know if anybody works in these companies, but for example, almost all of them will have the word integrity. Right? They've spent hundreds of thousands of pounds, and if you look at all of these values, they all look the same. There's an interesting thing here is that if you look across the values of all of these different ideologies, from Stoicism to Taoism, Buddhism, you actually start to see some common patterns. And I'm going to stick my neck out next year, and I'm going to suggest there are four pillars. Four ethical pillars are common across our species. I don't know whether I should say them now or not, but I'm not quite. But what I will do is we're going to get AI to try and validate it. So you get natural language processing to go and read all of these different corpuses and to try to see if there are any common themes that across these corpuses of human philosophy and text, and see if there is something that we agree on. I'll try and put out there what I think. So the first is I haven't really. So the first is I'll refer to a Greek term. But it's essentially know thyself. So it's a common idea about becoming wise or just becoming a more well-rounded human being. So know thyself is one. The second one is about developing a skill. So becoming good at something. Now it doesn't mean that lesson has to be valued by people, but just it's like the T-shape, right? What you would imagine in your organisation. The third, so the first two relate to the individual. So knowing thyself and going deep into knowing one thing or becoming skilled at something. The second two are related to other people. So the second two, and I'll use a term from actually the Hippocratic Oath, which is first do no harm, which is, it's a bit like don't do to other people that you wouldn't do to yourself. The problem with that is that if you're a psychopath, you would be happy for things to be done to you, therefore that gives you the legitimacy to do things to other people. Does that make sense? So the first do no harm, I think is a stronger one, but I think it needs some work. So that's about how you interact with other people. Don't do to people that you wouldn't do to yourself, or treat other people as they are you. And the fourth one is to live beyond yourself. And that often appears in Christianity and lots of other religions, and not religious, by the way. Living beyond yourself means at the moment, I guess my feeling is that humanity, a large portion of humanity, 50% of the population, are living in poverty. They can barely, they can't even live for themselves. And we, in this very, very privileged position, we end up using our resources. I don't know whether that's an endorsement or not. It's like the 4 commandments. They said, shut up, Daniel. I think that at the moment we are, if I was being brutally honest, we spend a lot of our time consuming stuff that we don't need, and we could be using that energy to live for other people.
Some of the poorest people are more generous.
Indeed. So those are the 4 themes. Now, what's interesting about those 4 themes is none of them prescribe an objective function. I used to think that we had to prescribe objective function, but I actually think that we as human beings, I used to think that we're not very good about thinking about the long term. That we always tend to just think about the short term, which is why we create an unsustainable future for ourselves. But if you look at the evidence, if you look at people that do have lots of wealth, they tend to then think about solving malaria and these other things. And I suspect that if we gave people that freedom, if we met people's basic needs, people will have the capacity and intelligence to think about how we can create a sustainable future for ourselves. So I think those are the 4 things, and I think that decentralization can help solve that. Yep.
Just to take what you said, that it's a Maslow model.
Yes.
Okay, so you go up past the physical needs,
Yep.
into social needs, and self-actualization. Is the driver for that, assuming we've all got to the point we've got the wealth and the resources to not worry about the physical things anymore, is it socially driven or is it self-actualization driven?
I think that I'm an evolutionist, which is I think that if we didn't have an altruistic drive to try and make a better future for ourselves, then we wouldn't have a future. If we didn't have this propensity to make our environment better for our genes to go and survive into, we wouldn't be around. And so I think that it's probably built in to try and make things more positive for us in the future. I don't know, does that make sense? Yeah.
I guess what I was looking for is, if you look at the motivation around all philanthropy, the critics of philanthropy is that it's done for ego.
Yeah.
It's done for you being the Bill Gates Foundation curing malaria, where governments couldn't do the ident kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's a legacy, is it driven to make demands better, or is it driven to be a legacy which is better? And it's, that's for me one of the big debates when we talk about that, is humans ultimately driven to sacrifice. There's that very small number of us who really want to get there.
I don't know. I guess that's why know thyself is quite important, and that would also relate to things like, I don't know if you're familiar with Nietzsche's Übermensch, the Superman. So Nietzsche had this idea that there were individuals that weren't tied by ego, they weren't driven by what society tells them to do, and they just lived to their vocation and things like that. So I'm going off on tangents here, but it's a big question. Sorry, yes.
My question was, how do you tackle information asymmetry? So in the society that you're, from what my understanding is, you're trying to get different people from different points connecting, but what if one person doesn't know that they can actually connect to the other person alongside the world? How do you then tackle that?
So if it was a global platform then, and you were contributing to this platform, the idea is that you would over time build a reputation about the things that you're contributing to, and when somebody boots up an idea over here, the AI will be able to match you and suggest this is maybe something for you to get involved with, and that's the kind of stuff that we're building inside Satalia. So instead of having managers broker people and say, there's this project coming up, you should do that, we can get AI to do that really easily. Yeah, it's something that's nice and easy to solve. Yes.
Before we move too far away from the previous topic,
Yeah.
I think in the zone what gentleman was highlighting as well. Is it just me, or there is a contradiction in those 4 values?
There is.
So how do we come to an agreement?
Yeah, I think that there's probably and this is highlighted in utilitarianism. I don't know if you're familiar with utilitarianism, but it comes from Jeremy Bentham, and he argued that we should make decisions that maximize the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Okay. So let me try. So if it was don't do to other people that you wouldn't do to yourself, if that was one of the rules, but the other rule was to maximize the greatest good for the greatest number of people, if for some strange reason that humanity's survival was dependent upon us having to sacrifice a child every year, so the happiness of this humanity depended upon taking the rights away of an individual, what's the right decision there? Not even, yeah. So there absolutely are contradictions, and I think that this is, an interesting challenge to solve. And that make sense? Yeah.
That's happened in history, that's happened already. Why are there so few black cats, for example? Because they were all killed, because they were considered to be witches.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think mankind has been through this before.
Yes.
What we're doing is using technology to make it wider and more global.
Maybe, yeah. So there's probably a hierarchy and precedence, and so to just expand on this. So imagine you're in a driver's car, and the objective function today is that we should keep the kid alive because we want to maximize life expectancy, and so we kill the two adults. But if suddenly our objective function becomes, if suddenly we've learned some new knowledge, for example, there's a meteorite coming to the planet, and it turns out these two adults are, I don't know, astrophysicists, and they have knowledge that can help us survive, then you kill the kid. Yeah? Yes or no?
Yeah. It's all there.
No. Yes?
2 questions. So, one, to build on what you just said, you make the decision to kill the kid, you make the decision to kill the adult. Who takes the blame?
Yeah.
So, is it this? And the second question, you're talking about taking away companies and taking away countries.
Yeah.
If you take those away, you can't blame anyone.
Yeah.
That's one thing. And the society we now created that's saying anyone can pitch in and support each other. Where does the money go? What's the money for?
Yeah.
What are you actually trying to support?
Yeah.
So if this person puts in more work than this one, who should earn more if you're trying to create a better society? So I think it's a good idea.
Sure.
Yeah.
So to address the last part of the question, so that the marketplace should value your skills according to what's in demand at the moment. If I was a data scientist 2,000 years ago, I would not be paid anything. I'm paid a lot of money now because right now in this time, data science is valuable. So there is a way of creating a marketplace where your skills are valued according to what's the need of society. But my hope would be actually that eventually we boot up so many ideas, and these ideas become innovations that commoditize our basic needs. And what I mean by that is that we are born into a world where our healthcare, our nutrition, our education, our shelter is already met. Our basic needs are met, and therefore, if you want to work, you can work. If you don't want to work, if you want to play computer games at home, go and do that. Right? It's totally up to you. I'm not making any judgment in terms of how you contribute to society. You don't have to. I would just like to create a world where we all have an equal opportunity to contribute to society. Yeah, I'm not saying that we all have to. I wanted to just make something else in your mind. So imagine a world where you're in your driverless car, and your AI, your personal AI knows that you're late for work. And by the way, who's to blame when you that's your question? The reason why people are suggesting creating an ethical setting is so that you're to blame, so that it stops the car manufacturers being to blame. But there's a distinction between AI safety and AI ethics. So AI safety is it kills the kid because it thinks it's a bollard. Okay, that's safety. That means the system is dysfunctional. AI ethics is should I kill the kid or should I kill the two adults? There's a distinction. And actually, a lot of people don't understand that distinction. But I want you to imagine a future world where you're in your driverless car and your personal AI knows that you're late for a meeting. It knows how valuable this meeting is to you. So what it does, because of micropayments and blockchain, it then negotiates with the lights and all of the other cars to say, move out of the way because I need to get to this meeting. So this is a marketplace. But the problem with this future world is that an individual in that world that might have lots of wealth can always outbid you. They can always outbid you. And this is one of the big challenges that we have with capitalism at the moment, which is that the large accumulation of wealth and power has landed in a small handful of people that now can hack the system. So the next question, instead of having this kind of capitalistic model, free market, should you have one AI that then knows about the value of everybody and then makes a decision, which is like a communistic model? So it's a very interesting challenge. Like, would you have a marketplace that can be hacked, or would you have one AI that you're relying on to make a good decision?
And wouldn't that be a company?
Sorry, I don't think it would be a company. I would like to decentralize the platform.
But that would be the concept of a company
Yeah.
and a hierarchy. So if someone sits in as a god, if you like, judging the rest of the people.
So when I said the word, we don't have hierarchies in Satalia, we have fluid hierarchies. So you are better placed to make a decision about software development, and I'm better placed to make a decision about business strategy based on our reputation, based on our expertise. And so there is a hierarchy there, but it's fluid, and the relationship is between you and the decision that needs to be made. It's not about you having power because of where you are in the hierarchy. Yeah.
don't you think that setting up such a system, sort of decentralized system that optimizes for something, still has to start with some goal? And that goal could be the individual, the realization of the potential of each individual, or it could be the well-being of society as a whole, the maximization of well-being of society, or it could be the greatest generation of intelligence collectively. Depending on your starting point, you want to come up with different rules and ratings.
Sure.
You're going to have very vastly different outcomes, I would say. Where are you at?
So you're absolutely right. It's a multi-objective function. So I haven't talked about the objective function, but the objective function is, at the moment you could argue that it's GDP. But if you again look at all of these texts and things like that, you'll probably start to see three themes. One theme is about maximizing people's access to happiness. Not maximizing happiness per se, because what makes you happy might make somebody else unhappy. And if we wanted to really maximize happiness right now, we'd put everybody in a simulator and give them all LSD. Right? But that's not sustainable for our species. So maximizing access to happiness is the first. The second one is around minimizing unnecessary suffering. So that's the second part. And the third is about maximizing the survivability of our species. So those are the three kind of themes that you start to see. And again, some of those have contradictions as well. Going back to so you kind of just highlighted those three.
I'm not sure I agree.
Okay, fair enough.
Just playing the devil's advocate, from your website says we are creating a future that transforms companies into organizations where anyone from anywhere in the world can contribute to innovations with absolute trust and freedom. In isolation, brilliant. But you are doing this for your clients who are competing with each other.
Sure. Yeah, I have to make money. No, I have to make money. I live in a camp. I can't.
That's your goal.
No, it's not. Actually, no, it's not my goal. My goal is to create this decentralized world. The way to do that is I have to make money. I have to get as many talented people in my organization. I have to inspire them. I have to put us in a position where we are decentralizing the applications that we build. So I could talk about our purpose and stuff like that. The cows come home. It's a means to an end.
What about your vision for, say, future of money? And how it may operate, and maybe perhaps beyond money.
I don't know. I don't know if everybody watched Star before, but there's a concept called the Star Trek economy, where again all of your basic needs are met and people are driven to contribute to society. And in the Star Trek economy, there is this concept of credits that isn't often talked about, but money is a very easy way of bartering and stuff like that. So I imagine money still being around, and we're not perfect, right? We still have desires. I still want to mate with that person. I still want things. We're still going to be fighting over things. And it might be that money is a way of facilitating that. But I haven't really thought too far about that. It's one of the big questions. I just did a TEDx talk recently, and I asked the question, if we were to start a planet from scratch, if we were to go to Mars or wherever, and we were to create a new social, economic, political model from scratch, would we have countries, would we have companies, would we have money? Would there be a maximum amount of wealth one person can accumulate? Would there be a maximum number of children that you can have? These are all interesting questions, and I think we can answer them. I don't know about money.
Do you have a link to that?
Yeah, I'll share that.
So you spoke about the decentralized economy.
Yes.
It's a company in Socrates.
Okay.
So are you doing something similar to that?
So I don't know who they are. There are lots of companies out there that want to operate like this, that want to operate as decentralized autonomous organizations. You'll find two things happen. They get to a point where they have 30 people, and then they realize that they can't have everybody making random decisions and it all becomes chaos. And then what happens is they have to put structures and managers and all this kind of stuff in place. So there's a size problem. And the other issue is that sometimes you raise capital, and the VCs say, you now have to have management teams, you now have to scale, and you now have to have these KPIs, and that changes your organizational structure. I don't have any VCs that own Satalia 10 years organically, so I'm free to make these crazy ideas.
I think if one thing is like it's out of the team side. Is what about the offering?
What's the offering?
Yeah, just trying to build the family. So everybody develops in this way.
Right.
And you can also get
I haven't heard of them. I haven't told you what Satalia does. We just build systems for companies. We'll build routing systems, and we'll do anything. We'll give them the money, then we'll take that money and we'll try to then invest that money into doing things that are good. And actually, just one thing to comment is that if you are a company and you want to compete with the Amazons, the Googles, the Facebooks, they have infinite capital. They have access to infinite capital. And if I asked you, how do you compete with a company that doesn't need to make money? How do you compete with a company that doesn't need to make money? But they can pay those people more, they can give them bean bags and free food and...
Regulation.
Yeah? Regulation, yeah, good luck. I think that you remove the concept of a company. So if I ask myself, how does Satalia compete with DeepMind or compete with Google? The answer is we can't. Right? The only way that I can do that is by changing the rules of the game. And if you're a company and you're sitting on an innovation, at some point, one of those 4 companies will eat that innovation. They'll throw more at it and they'll out-innovate you. The only way that you can keep that innovation sustainable is by centralizing it. By putting it out there, giving it to everybody, creating an economic model that funds a community of global talent that drives that innovation forwards. I think that if you want to survive as an organisation, you have to decentralise yourself. And so yeah, I'm hoping that that's what will happen with companies.
Is it that already happening with,
Yes.
with Uber?
Yes. Well, not with Uber,
You know, contracts and all of that.
it's not with Uber, but Google will open source everything. What Google don't do is they don't create an economic model that feeds that community. Right? But they immediately commoditize their technologies and make it impossible for anybody to come along and out-innovate them because they commoditize it. And I think that that's what we should be doing. But the nice thing is, if you can commoditize all this stuff, we make everything next to zero, then it means we'll all be able to access it free. And eventually we'll be able to access our nutrition and healthcare and our education.
The data they're bad.
Yeah, exactly, they get access to it. Yeah, that's my argument to the companies. If you decentralize your innovations, you'll get access to the community and you'll get access to the data.
And do you think this sort of move towards what's happening in open banking, where the data belongs to the individual?
Yeah.
Bankers maybe not next. Where there's this movement now to force data that beyond banking data has to be become open and available. As customers give permission to other firms to use it. So if Amazon holds data out, Amazon has to be compelled to make that data available to its competitors.
Yeah.
If you give that permission.
Yes.
Do you think this movement will have fundamental
Yeah.
on what you've just
I think only if it benefits the companies, then yes. Yeah. Yes.
Quick comment on the previous one. So companies are decentralized thing. I think economies and governments are a way to outsource certain functions to structures.
Yep.
So people don't, put other way, the problem with decentralization is that small entities like individuals or small companies don't want to have the burden of deciding everything, carrying the weight of law and everything else.
Sure.
But I also have a practical question, which is on my mind about the AI.
Mm-hmm.
I come from the classical school of knowledge representation and rules and all that. And referring to a model of insight being driven by machine learning, but decision making being based on rules and Socrates thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about that in my spare brain cycles. But I feel that if you have done insight and then put rule-based decision making onto it, it's too late. Because you don't know it's machine learning is a black box.
Sure.
Right? So do you think that this rule-based thing should be plugged in at a certain stage of machine learning to kind of connect them?
I start with the optimization typically in organizations, because I say organizations don't have machine learning problems, they have optimization problems. By going in and saying we can improve your efficiency by 5% because we can optimize better, we drive value, and then we say, okay, but did you know this data here that's being fed into there is wrong? We build a machine learning component that can make that more accurate.
So you say we start
with optimization,
essentially, and then go back
and
right. Maybe start with
exactly. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
that's right.
Okay, and last question, because we're massively over, and it's a hugely interesting topic, and I'm sure lots was it's been a really great talk, but last question.
So what is the impact on the education system to produce a product, human capital, to be ready for a decentralized system?
I love this question. Because I just had a baby girl, 7 months old. I'm thinking, what does she need to do? And so we just had a chat with Campbell about it. But I think the superpower for the future is not whether you're a good software developer or whatever. I think that if I was to consolidate it into one word, it would be orchestration. And what I mean by orchestration is that I expect in the future, if you are really good at orchestrating services and technologies and architecting complex systems from an engineering perspective, that's actually a very powerful skill. But also, equally, if you're good at orchestrating people, leadership, all of this kind of stuff, inspiring people, I think that's also an incredibly important skill. So, what I want to try and foster in my girl is linked to those 4 values. So, one is curiosity, how I can know myself. The other is creativity, how I can become good at something. The other is courage, how I can live beyond myself. And the other is care, how I can make sure that I don't do harm to other people. So those are the 4 things I'm trying to figure out how to foster in my baby girl. Make sense? Yeah.
Thank you very much, Daniel. You've got Daniel's details here, and I'm sure he'll be happy to connect.